This is a CBS News special report. I'm Gayle King. We've got breaking news this morning. A major development in the investigation of the president's son, that would be Hunter Biden. CBS News has just learned that Hunter has agreed to plead guilty to 2 charges stemming from a 5-year federal investigation. The 2 charges are related to his failure to pay taxes, both misdemeanors. The 3rd charge, that's a felony possession of a handgun by a drug user, is part of a diversion agreement. The gun possession charge would be dismissed if Hunter Biden completes the conditions of that agreement. Now, this is not the same as a guilty plea. And sources tell CBS News the U.S. attorney in Delaware, that would be David Weiss, who was appointed by then-President Donald Trump back in 2018, is recommending probation and no fines. The judge still needs to accept those charges, followed by an in-court appearance at a later date. Now, the investigation into Hunter Biden, as you may know, initially focused on his international business dealings, but later shifted to matters related to tax evasion and whether he lied on a federal form in order to purchase a gun. Senior investigative correspondent, that's Catherine Herridge, has been following this investigation from the very beginning and joins us now. Catherine, it's good to see you. What can you tell us? How big of a deal is this, is one question, and what are the details of this plea arrangement?
Well, Gayle, it's a very big deal. Based on our reporting here at CBS News, this tax investigation has been running since at least 2018 out of this office in Delaware. And in the last few minutes, a handful of pages have been filed with the court in Delaware confirming that Hunter Biden's legal team, as well as the U.S. attorney David Weiss, a Trump appointee, have reached a plea agreement in this long-running case. As you mentioned, it includes 2 tax charges, the willful failure to pay taxes, as well as gun possession by an unlawful or drug user. In this case, as you mentioned, it would be handled through a diversion program. In layman's terms, what that means is that if Hunter Biden abides by the terms of this plea agreement, then the felony charge or the gun charge would in effect be wiped clean or dismissed, Gayle.
Now, we know investigators who are looking at other possible charges like money laundering, foreign corrupt practices, and tax evasion. What do we know about anything beyond the 3 charges in this particular deal that we're hearing about this morning?
Well, just reading through these preliminary documents, it seems to indicate that there is just the tax charges and then the gun charge. We have what's called an information, which is the most basic document that is filed with the court. And you're right to point out that this investigation really has spanned at least 5 years and has looked at allegations of money laundering, potential violations of foreign lobbying laws, as well as tax evasion, which is the willfulness to avoid paying taxes, and that itself is a felony. But there should be additional paperwork which will lay out some of the boundaries of what is still on the table or whether, in effect, it's completely closed in the future.
Do you expect to see Hunter Biden in court anytime soon?
Well, what's standard in these cases, Gayle, is that this plea agreement has to be approved by a judge. They look at the terms to see if they are satisfied and they are comfortable with the terms. And then there's something called an allocution, and you can think of that as a conversation between the judge and the defendant, in this case, Hunter Biden, to make sure that he understands what he is agreeing to in this plea deal and that he's had good legal counsel and that he understands most specifically that there are certain rights that he is waiving under the terms. I can tell you, having covered this for several years now, that this is likely to be a very controversial plea agreement, especially with Republicans on Capitol Hill. Over the last few years, not only in the House but in the Senate, their investigators have raised very serious questions about these business deals with Chinese nationals, as well as this Ukraine energy firm, Burisma. And then more recently, we've had whistleblowers come forward. An IRS whistleblower spoke on the record with CBS News, as well as whistleblowers from the Justice Department have gone to Capitol Hill complaining that this investigation has been slow-walked and that standard investigative procedures have not been followed. So this may just be the beginning of the story in many respects, Gayle.
Yeah, it seems so. Catherine, thanks. Let's go to Capitol Hill. Scott MacFarlane is there. Scott, what do you expect the reaction to be from Republicans in Congress? You know, as Catherine pointed out, and we all know, Hunter's been a long-time target.
The Congressional House Oversight Committee has launched an ambitious investigation into Hunter Biden. They campaigned on that before they took the majority in January, and this will not stop or mute their investigation. They've been trying to paint a picture of a Justice Department that has been weaponized against Republicans in favor of Democrats, and that has what they characterize as a two-tiered justice system. One for Republicans and one for everybody else. The House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Hunter Biden's bank records. They've yielded thousands of pages. They've also subpoenaed one of his business partners, Devin Archer, for a deposition. This will not squelch or mute their investigation, but I want to add one legal footnote. We just got a copy of the criminal information filed against Hunter Biden in the federal court in Delaware. A criminal information is what is filed when there is a plea agreement pending. It says in so many words, the defendant, Robert Hunter Biden, knowing that he was an unlawful user of and addicted to a controlled substance, did knowingly possess a firearm, a Colt Cobra. And they have a date in there, Gail. The dates for this crime to which the president's son will be pleading guilty, October 12th, 2018 to October 23rd, 2018, a 2-week finite period of time.
That's very specific. We also know some congressional leaders are still looking into the Biden family. What are they looking for, Scott?
They have made the allegation uncorroborated that the Biden family, not just Hunter Biden, but the president's family, has ties to foreign influence peddlers and have been taking money from foreign influence peddlers, including in China. They have made this part of their broader investigation. This is not just a priority of the House Oversight Investigative Committee. This appears to be the priority of the House Oversight Investigative Committee. That will not change with this news from the federal courthouse in Delaware.
All right. Thank you very much, Scott. Senior White House and political correspondent, that would be Ed O'Keefe, joins us now. Ed, good to see you. This is obviously very, very personal for the president. He's outside of D.C. right now, but how has he dealt with the news in this investigation overall?
Gail, good morning to you. Yes, the president's waking up in San Francisco this morning, where he has a series of fundraisers and official events later today. We'll see if he has anything to say for himself. At that point, I'm told to anticipate some kind of statement from the White House here in a little bit, but we don't have it yet. He has been defiant throughout his son's legal problems. Asked about this in an interview in May, he said, quote, "My son has done nothing wrong. I trust him. I have faith in him." And when he was asked how the charges might affect his own presidency, the president said, quote, "It impacts my presidency by making me feel proud of him."
Well, it seems like we've seen instances recently where we've seen Hunter physically with President Biden, and deliberately so. It's like the White House wants the public to see the father and son together. What do you make of that, if anything?
Well, it was a signal to us, Gail, that this was nearing some kind of a conclusion, that after several years of personal recovery, rebuilding his family, dealing with his legal matters, he now suddenly was appearing far more frequently alongside his father. I remember most especially in Ireland when the president made that trip in April. He was at the state dinner for the French president. He was at the Easter egg roll with his young son. He was at the Kennedy Center honors sitting just behind behind the president in December. So we have seen him much more, which is not only a signal that he himself seemed to be resolving this, but that the president felt that his son could be alongside him for all of this, despite the ongoing legal matter and despite the political pressure that the family is facing after this 5-year ordeal.
So, Ed, do you think that there will be political consequences or an impact to Biden's re-election campaign because of his son's plea deal this morning?
Well, we'll see. Remember, we've seen Republicans for several months now, especially in the wake of the indictment of former President Donald Trump, continue to talk about a so-called two-tiered system of justice, that there are certain people who get off or who get some kind of an agreement like this and others who face prosecution. Now, of course, there are those who cooperate with Justice Department matters and there are those that don't, and that is part of this. But certainly Republicans will continue, it's expected, to make hay of this. As Scott pointed out on Capitol Hill, it certainly remains a big topic of conversation and one that even presidential candidates have been talking about. Ron DeSantis, among others out on the trail, continue to invoke Hunter Biden's name every day on the campaign trail. It is a well-known story among the president's critics or opponents, and we'll see now in the coming hours how Republicans react and how Democrats perhaps rally around the Biden family.
Yeah, we'll be watching. Catherine, back to you before we leave. Why do you think both sides decided to make this deal and make this deal at this time?
Well, Gail, that's an excellent question. My analysis, having covered this for several years, is that the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, David Weiss, was under considerable pressure to try and bring it to a resolution, either charge the president's son or reach some kind of plea agreement. I haven't spoken to a former Justice Department official or tax expert who said to me that it takes 5 years to handle a simple tax and a gun case. In addition, it's not happening in a vacuum. As I mentioned, in recent weeks and months, we've had whistleblowers come forward to Capitol Hill complaining that standard procedures were not followed in this case and that it was slow-walked, using their terms. For the president's son, clearly it brings some closure on the tax issues, and as any plea agreement would, has the effect of limiting future legal exposure. I just want to note in closing that we are still waiting to see the memorandum of the plea agreement. This is the essential document. What's agreed to in the four corners of that document is really what is binding, not what either party hopes or wishes it may include or preclude in the future.
Well, there's certainly more to come. Thank you, Catherine Herridge.
You're
Thank you, team. Ed O'Keefe and Scott MacFarlane. Once again, the breaking news we had this morning was Hunter Biden, the president's son, has just agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges of failure to pay income taxes. Now, the younger Biden will also admit he illegally possessed a handgun, which is a felony. This plea deal, as Catherine pointed out, stems from a 5-year federal investigation. Hunter Biden will not face jail time. Instead, he needs to complete probation. Our coverage will continue on CBS News Streaming right now, your local news, and of course, tonight on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Gail King here in New York.